Okay, here we are in
Yeah.
that space where we confronted Theos and defeated him and two of Wodika's minions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is left is to touch this part of the machine, and I'm sure that will lead to the end of the game. So before we do that, I would like to read in our journal something about myself, Gradius, the character I'm playing here. Um, there should be something. Biography. Alright, let's see how long this is. It's kind of long. Few people truly understand what it feels like to be forced into the service of another, stripped of freedom and dignity alike, but until recently this had been your lot in life. Hard labor, chains, and the ceaseless gaze of a master. In your homeland, Rawatai, you were sold into slavery aboard a galley ship, but you conspired with your fellow slaves. Together you seized control of the ship and sent every last one of your masters overboard. You have decided to travel to Gilded Vale in order to distance yourself from your old life, and it may not be long, before you depart in order to further your distance. You fell ill traveling with a caravan bounded for Gilded Vale. The caravan master sent you off with one of his guides, Kaliska, in search of a remedy. While out searching for the remedy, you were ambushed and returned to your camp to find it slaughtered at the hands of angry locals. You dealt with them, only to be nearly killed by a wind that threatened to shear your soul from your body. You escaped with Kaliska into an ancient ruin. You emerge from the ruin to find a strange ritual being performed at some kind of ancient machine. There was a man there who commanded others, and there was something oddly familiar about him. As he left, the machine began to spin, generating some kind of energy, and there was a blast that felt like windstorm you had encountered earlier. It turned the others who had been with him to ash, and Callisto was killed as well. You were knocked unconscious by the blast, and when you came to, you felt odd. You were seeing things, hearing things. You departed the ruins, attempting to reach Gilded Vale on foot, where hopefully you would be able to find someone who could cure you. When you arrived in Gilded Vale, you found that the town was not the growing and prosperous settlement you had been told it was. Instead, you found a dying town at the mercy of a phenomenon called Widewind's legacy, and received a cold welcome from the town magistrate. Your prospects of settling in Gilded Vale looked bleaker as it was, but they may have been totally dashed when the tolling bells of Redrick's hold announced that their master's child had not been born in good health. The magistrate advised you to rest at an inn. You helped an Adir wizard named Aloth out of a scrape with the locals of Gilded Vale. He was understandably grateful to find company for the road. When you tried to sleep, it was restless, full of encroaching whispers, and you experienced a vivid nightmare. You saw an old dwarf. Okay, you know what? I'm skipping some of this. I just want to learn about the last part. You communed with the gods in Ter Evron and learned that Theos' plot does not end with the destruction of Animancy and Deerwood. He intends to give the souls he displaced to Wodica, a move that would likely restore her dominion over the other gods. Bareth demanded the deaths of the Archdruid Raistin and Erona, High Ovate of the Golden Grove, and you saw their lives ended. Enveloped in the souls bequeathed to you by the gods, you leapt into the pit on the summit of the burial isle, and after an immense fall landed alive in the eternal prison of the Delungen told you about. At the far end of Breath Emin, you met Iovara, who remembered you from your life long ago. She said you had come to visit her once after she had been sentenced, and that it was to ask her if her teachings were true, that the gods weren't real. She had given you an answer, but no proof, and still unsatisfied, you had gotten to confront Theos about it in Sun and Shadow. She suggested that perhaps your soul still sought resolution in this matter, though Theos would not likely be able to provide it. You left Yovara to her fate in the prison, where she preferred to stay as a statement of defiance to the gods. In Sun and Shadow, you found the chamber where you confronted Theos long ago, and here challenged his authority again, this time with greater success. Believing Theos deserved a fresh start, you wiped his past clean. That's not true. I don't think I don't think I mean, his soul it's like an evil soul. So I don't think that deserved it. Or maybe he's just, maybe he's a product of like a battered home, a single parent. Father beat him, was alcoholic, you know, really horrible shit. He was picked on at school. Shit happened to him that horrible, horrible stuff. You wiped his past clean from his soul, giving him the opportunity, perhaps, to live a normal life, free of all his terrible knowledge and doubt. With Theos' death, you were able to receive confirmation at last of the origin and nature of the gods, and that answer seemed to bring some relief to your soul. The hallucinations and whispers receded. All that remained was to decide what to do with the souls trapped in Sun and Shadow. Alright, we promised Barath. As you approach the machine, the path underfoot suddenly changes to a cobbled road. If you hadn't experienced visions like this already in Ter Erbron, you'd be tempted to believe that the machine had sucked you into it and deposited you in the middle of nowhere. The sun blazes overhead, and the rolling meadows and thick forests on either side of the road could be anywhere in the Deerwood. A shrill cackle turns your head. Standing next to you is a malnourished man clad in a threadbare loincloth and manacles. His entire body is striped with lash marks, and there are scarred pits where his nose and ears should be. He stinks of stale sweat and unwashed filth. You notice someone wandering down the road, but the figure's back is to you. The scarred slave has your attention for now.
You know the bitterness of servitude, Watcher. The sting of the lash on your back, and scalding rage in your chest as you watch your masters grow fat on your toils. Oil and wine dribbling down their chins while blood runs from yours. You have labored at the pleasure of others. That shriveled hag in Hodrit House. Those well-bred thieves with their lordly pretensions. The wretched tribesmen playing out their fantasies of grandeur. And then you cowered and knelt before the gods themselves, begging one paltry favor and receiving riddles and visions in response. And now the gods give you orders and commands, even while you set out to fix what they cannot. Yet what have they offered you?
Who is Skane? Pelagina. They offered us the means to stop Woduka and Theos. That's enough for me. A suspicious grimace crosses Aloth's face. I get the feeling that this is his way of giving you new orders on behalf of his own master. Be careful, Gradius. Heravius clears his throat and quietly says, 5 copper. Says he's about to sell you his own agenda. Only Whale knows what that might be. Heravius grins and leans closer, whispering, if I were you, I'd tell him the other gods offered us a dozen nubile lasses. See if he can match that and haggle from there. Skane, given the breadth of the iron manacle, it's amazing that he can raise his bone-thin arm, but he does, and he points to the person walking the other way along the road.
The exiled queen is not an ungrateful patron.
You get a better look at the lone figure and realize that she's wearing robes, tattered and singed but fine nonetheless. On her head is the silhouette of a broken crown. She continues walking, her pace slow but determined.
Finish the work Theos began. Strengthen Woodica with these souls and allow her to become the most powerful of all the gods, with you as her favored.
Tempting, but no. Helping Woduka would mean that the secrets of the gods stay hidden. He rubs his hands together, his black eyes gleaming, safely hidden, yes, from the violent overlords who would cease to fear punishment in the next life, from the heavy-handed masters who would answer to no one. The world needs some schemes, or are the souls of Kith so pure that you would snap the tenuous threads that bind society? I've been working against Woedica this whole time. Why would she thank me now after I've defeated her most loyal servant? The ragged hole in Skane's face wrinkles with disgust. Loyal and weak, Theos proved his inadequacy when he failed to anticipate you. A plan exposed is worse than none at all. But you have proven resourceful, equal to the schemes of gods. Woedica has a long memory, Watcher, for both friends and foes, and she keeps her oaths. What do you mean by her favored? The recipient of Woedica's blessings. She has always had a place for mortals of particular merit. If you help her now, she will become the most powerful of all the gods, and you will be the one who made her so. Think of the lifetime of reward you would reap. The only reward I wish is the joy of pulling bloody shards of her broken crown from my staff when I have finished with her trial. Durance. Skane turns his flinty eyes on Durance. So says your companion who's been abandoned by his own god. Do you really trust him to make alliances for you? Skane takes a bundle at his feet and hefts the burden onto his back. I have explained the alternative, Watcher. Continue as a pawn of the gods or a partner of one. At the other end of the road, the figure stops. She turns her head just enough to look over her shoulder. Her face is mostly hidden, but one merciless eye peers at you from a cheek of rippled, scorched flesh. I won't help you.
You say that now, but when you're standing in front of the machine, considering the lifetimes and the powers that await you, we'll see what you do.
He continues down the road, and when the sun suddenly drops below the horizon, it plunges you into momentary darkness. You come to your senses in front of the machine. Eder, all these evils we've seen, going all the way back to the Saints' War, that was all Woedica. Imagine if she was stronger on top of it all. Baby, she's about to be. Saving. We're back. With your companions bearing witness, you step up to the place where Theos once stood before his people long ago. The great machine lies in front of you, idle, ready. You have seen this machine and others like it in operation. You understand how it works. It is a device for directing souls. As a watcher, it would be a simple matter to influence that direction. Though as big as the machine is, it may be the last thing you ever do. Speak the command to activate the machine. There is a shrieking of stone grinding against stone as old cogs loosen and begin to turn. You have only moments before the souls will be sent into the Adra vein. This will be your only chance at redirecting them. Number 4 seems like the best thing to do. But we're working for Bereth, and he wants them back in the reincarnation cycle. Very well. You close your eyes and expand your perception outward, taking in the immense totality of the tens of thousands of souls orbiting the chamber. Your grasp on the souls is tenuous. You find yourself fighting to keep them all within your influence, and you can feel them slipping away from you as the machine gains speed. A brief moment comes when it feels as though you hold all of them at once, and their force is so great it feels as though they will tear you apart. In that moment you dedicate your entire being to bending their orbit, channeling their flow in a new direction.
At your command, the ancient device became your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. There, in the pale pulsing glow of the machine that set you on this path long ago, you summoned all your strength, focusing on your objective and blocking out all else. With a single concussive blast that rocked the chamber and sent you tumbling to the ground, you freed the souls from their stasis. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed, and sleep welcomed you at long last. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Theos used to enter Sun and Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. You emerged in Ter Evron after days of tunneling through the rubble Theos had left behind, and when you stepped into the daylight, you were faced with a different Deerwood than the one you had left. At your direction, the lost souls of the Hollowborn were funneled back into the churn of Bareth's wheel to find their way into new vessels and partake in the life they had been denied during Widewind's legacy. Though parents of Hollowborn would remain just that, the end of Widewind's legacy would bring about a spate of new, healthy births, with many of the infants bearing souls once meant for Hollowborn children. The natural cycle of life and death had been restored to Deerwood, and with it came a renewed faith in the providence of the gods. Helia, who had expected the souls to be returned to the Hollowborn, was infuriated by your duplicity. The goddess of motherhood demanded new births in compensation, and made a bargain with Bareth to trade death for new life. The skies of Deerwood darkened, blotted with swarms of birds and other winged creatures, called together to claim what the Sky Mother believed to be hers by right. For months, the people of Deerwood were forced to stay under shelter for fear of the vicious, unexplained attacks from the sky. The incidents left entire villages decimated and littered the streets of Defiance Bay with corpses covered in 1,000 puncture wounds. Lord Radric's zeal had brought him back to life once, but it would not do so again. Radric's destruction at your hands spelled the end of his suffocating rule over Gilded Vale and the surrounding area. In his absence, the village prospered, becoming a popular destination for new settlers anxious to leave Defiance Bay after the riots. Without a nearby ruler, it also grew more wild, with many settlers moving on as soon as they'd arrived, turned off by lawlessness that was excessive even by Deerwooden standards. Nevertheless, despite the challenges of living there, Gilded Vale had survived, and would continue to survive for the foreseeable future. Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wolfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval. In the ensuing weeks, the streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards. Few dared to step outside their own doors alone or unarmed. But order was soon re-established by the Knights of the Crucible, who, despite their depleted numbers, had gained favor in the public eye for their role in the unraveling of the conspiracy surrounding Widewind's legacy, and were quickly reinforced by returning forces from Fleetbreaker Castle. For the Knights, their resurgence marked a return to the tradition as well. Having seen firsthand the dangers presented by dabblers in animancy, the Order quickly abolished the practice internally, preferring the familiarity of their hammers and forges to the uncertainties of Essence and Adra. Their identity rediscovered, the Knights suppressed their political aspirations and began once again to train their recruits in the art of blacksmithing, recapturing the post-revolutionary ideals of Deerwood and regaining the respect of its citizens as a result. The destruction of the machine atop Ter Noaneth spelled the end of the reanimated corpses in Heritage Hill. Though at first few were willing to venture into the abandoned district, it was soon cleaned out and rebuilt. The district's horrors still fresh in people's minds, it would be some time before it was fully repopulated. But eventually the lure of cheap prime land would all but erase the memory. The Duke's assassination at the apparent hands of an Animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay, and few Animancers survived the first day. Many Deerwoodans took the end of Widewind's legacy as a sign, both that the gods did not approve of animancy, and that the purging of Animancers in Defiance Bay had been enough to satisfy them. In time, their rage would subside, and a number of surviving Animancers remained in and around Defiance Bay, often taking to the wilds to practice their science without repercussions. The town of Deerford had seen the last of the cult of Scan. Dark rumors about the town's many curses quickly faded, and travelers soon returned. The fortress of Cadnua emerged as a bastion of security in the midst of an untamed land, becoming the envy of every Thane and Earl in Deerwood. Legend grew over time of its impregnability, and stories of formidable invaders easily scattered by the keep's defenses became popular around the hearths of Deerwoodanians. Likewise, it also became a beacon to travelers, merchants, and visiting dignitaries alike. Reputed as the finest fortress in all Deerwood, people would journey from near and distant lands alike to experience its fabled hospitality and grandeur. Palagina had gone against the Duke's Bell's orders by inventing a new trade arrangement with the Anamenfath to accommodate the recovering Deerwoodan market. With the Deerwood's people still weakened by Widewind's legacy, the Valian republics easily pushed their would-be competitors out of the market. For her outrageous insubordination and audacity, Palagina was banished from the republics. She traveled north in the Eastern Reach, avoiding Valian ports and entering the ranks of the kind wayfarers. Despite her bravery and dedication to those in her care, her strange appearance made her feel like an outsider wherever she went. Adair chose not to return home. Still conflicted as to his role in the Saints' War and unsure of his place in the Deerwood, he took a ship to Adir and reunited with his parents. There, he resumed the quiet lifestyle he had grown accustomed to in his years as a farmhand in Gilded Vale. When the dust settled in Sun and Shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Theos Ixarchanon, his former master. He saw where the Grandmaster had gone wrong and what would be required to undo the harm Theos had wrought. With a flick of his wrist, he burned Theos's robe, headdress, and every other symbol of the man's power. Never again, he vowed, should Kith live in fear and blind obedience to an authority they did not understand. Armed with the knowledge and courage he had gained on his journeys with the Watcher, he set out on the long and lonely task of dismantling the Leaden Key. With both their aims fulfilled, Kanarua bid the Watcher farewell and sailed back to his beloved Rawatai. There, he reported on his findings to the Lore College. Kana spoke of the Engwithan people, describing both their vile experiments and their inspiring accomplishments. He spoke too of the destruction of the tablet by the Leaden Key, and the group's efforts to erase the Engwithan legacy from the world. Both inspiration and cautionary tales, he said, could be found in the world beyond Rawatai's borders. Kana urged his people to continue to pursue knowledge abroad, so that the lessons found there might benefit Tekoa. Kana's inability to prove his theory of Engwithan influence diminished his academic standing, but his passion drew much interest from those less concerned with degrees. Kana swiftly became an influential figure in the move toward a more collaborative approach to expansion on the northern continent. In his personal life, he came to enjoy the reputation of an affable eccentric, willing to share grand and impossible secrets, along with a drink and a song. With Theos defeated and the souls released from Sun and Shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Deerwood. The grieving mother sought a place where she might do penance for the birthing bell. She returned to Deerford, where, to the astonishment of the villagers, she delivered the first healthy child in over a decade. She remained there, and with each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Deerwood and a measure of grace for her own troubled past. Durrance continued to blame Woodica for the atrocities of the Saints' War. Believing Magrin to have been a pawn in the machinations of the Queen that was, and feeling that Theos's expulsion had been a step towards reconciliation with his goddess, Durrance tried for a time to reopen communication with her. When only silence came, he took it as a condemnation of his continued existence. Ultimately, he built a pyre and threw himself upon it, using his own shattered staff as kindling. Sagani experienced the 4 months of her journey back to Masuk in vivid colors. She strove to memorize every moment of her final trip through the Deerwood, Glonfoth, the Valian Republics, and beyond, preparing to tell her village of what she had seen on her long journey. All of Masuk shared in her triumph, and she felt her pride and elation magnified by the joy of her village. Never again did she doubt the value of her sacrifices. After decades as a long hunter, Sagani finally became one of Masuk's most respected elders. She guided her community with wise counsel, and a generation after she finally passed, another huntress journeyed into the world to find her soul. For you, the death of Theos brought an end to your waking visions, and a silence to the whispers of the past. In their absence, you were able to sleep. The questions of a distant lifetime ceased to trouble your soul. All that remained was what to make of the answer. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead.
So that was a decent ending. Shame about Durrance. And at last, I don't know if we're no longer a watcher, but at least we got our head back, man. We got our head back. It was a selfish choice to, in order to regain sanity, but that was my main modus operandi, was to regain the sanity. Not much art here in the closing credits, which is disappointing. Matthew Mercer. Well, okay, sir or madam. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this series of videos. The Let's Play of Pillars of Eternity. On hard, which means we only had 2 camping supplies maximum, unlike the 4 you get in normal, which kind of sucked. You know, a lot of going back and re-equipping camping supplies, but other than that, it's a very enjoyable game. You know, there were bugs, but it didn't take away from the pleasure of playing. And I hope you give it a try. Okay, take care.